Hi, welcome to the Listen Up Girl podcast, your daily LGBTQ plus news podcast. I'm Zach Randall-Friedman, and today is Friday, July the 10th. I've got a packed show for you today. An LGBTQ plus cruise ship carrying nearly 2,000 passengers has been turned away by two countries, and the story keeps getting worse. A Republican governor in a blue state just signed a law forcing teachers to out trans kids to their parents. Texas Tech professors are suing after being told they can't teach about LGBTQ plus people or Black history. A major new study sheds light on trans men and pregnancy, and the Orange Convicted Felons team calls bike lanes DEI. And a gay man is entering the race for the U.S. Senate in Maine after the Democratic nominee collapsed in a scandal. So let's get into it, starting off with the cruise from hell. It was turned away by Turkey and now by Egypt. So we start on the high seas and not in a good way. An Atlantis Events cruise carrying nearly 2,000 LGBTQ plus passengers, mostly American men, has now been denied port access by two countries in a row. And here's what happened. The ship, the Scarlet Lady, chartered by Virgin Voyages, departed Athens on July 5th for a 10-day Athens to Venice cruise. Turkey was supposed to be a major stop, but at the last minute, Turkish authorities blocked the ship from docking, citing, quote, moral standards and family values. They said the ship was chartered by groups whose behaviors were, their words, incapable of the fabric of our society. Rich Campbell, the CEO of Atlantis Events, said that this is the first time in the company's 36-year history that they have been told it could not dock because of who we are. So they rerouted. Egypt was the backup plan. The pyramids, Cairo, a consolidation port, except that Egypt then refused the ship entry too. And that happened yesterday. The ship is now scrambling to find alternative ports while passengers are still on board. Think about this, 2,000 gay men on a cruise ship, many who've spent money on private excursions. Tours to see the pyramids are being turned away, twice by governments that decided tourists weren't welcome because of their sexual orientation. Homosexuality isn't even officially criminalized in Turkey or Egypt. They just don't want our dollars or our presence. And that says everything about where we are in the world right now. Campbell called it strange and sad, and I call it a diplomatic disgrace. It's very disgraceful. Next, New Hampshire just forced teachers to out trans kids. From the international to a very local, New Hampshire Governor Kelly Ayotte, a Republican, has signed a law forcing public school teachers to out transgender students to their parents. This is Senate Bill 430, and it requires any state's credentialed educator to respond to a written parental inquiry about their child within 10 business days and answer, quote, completely and honestly. And that includes whether a student is using a different name or pronouns than the ones that are on their birth record. And here's what makes this especially pointed. It reverses a 2024 New Hampshire Supreme Court ruling that explicitly said that schools could protect students' private information from parents. The court ruled at that time that parental rights in the public schools context have limits and that keeping students' gender identity confidential did not violate those rights. The governor just tore that ruling up. Teachers who don't comply could face professional discipline, up to including losing their teaching license. LGBTQ plus advocates say this puts educators in an impossible position. Follow the law, potentially out a student who hasn't told their family, or protect the student and risk their career. LGBTQ plus youth who are not ready to come out at home are significantly higher risk for self-harm, depression, and homelessness. This law treats that reality as irrelevant. New Hampshire is in New England, not in the Deep South, and this is happening everywhere. And we need to keep paying attention to this where it happens since it's happening everywhere. Our next story is Texas Tech just got sued for erasing LGBTQ plus and Black history from classrooms. Faculty groups have filed a federal lawsuit against Texas Tech University system, challenging directives that they say amount to an unprecedented erasure of LGBTQ plus and Black history from college classrooms. The lawsuit targets two memos issued by Texas Tech's chancellor, a Republican state senator named Brandon Creighton, that required professors across 5 institutions to disclose whether their course material included anything related to race, sexual orientation, or gender identity. If flagged, those materials had to be pulled until the Board of Regents signed off. This lawsuit was brought by Americans Association of University Professors, Legal Lambda, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And the examples in this complaint are staggering. Professors were told that they can't teach Plato's Republic or Between the World and Me, a national book award-winning book about racism. A law professor couldn't present race-related material about Dred Scott versus Sanford in the first year of congressional law course, and medical students were blocked from observing care for transgender patients, even when those patients were in completely unrelated conditions like high blood pressure. One professor was told to remove the word systematic from a syllabus because it raises concerns with the regions. Attorneys argue that restrictions violate the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment, and that they were enforced in ways that specifically targeted Black faculty. At least one biology professor left her job after 5 years, citing the censorship as the sole reason. These groups are asking a federal judge to declare memos unconstitutional and block the enforcement. This is exactly the kind of case that sets precedents for better or for worse. Next is new study: trans men may miscarry at significantly higher rates. So this was important health news that are unlikely to see covered anywhere else. A new peer-reviewed study, the most comprehensive of its kind, reviewed 44 published studies on pregnancy outcomes for trans men and trans masculine people. The findings are concerning and underscore an urgent need for more research. Across multiple studies, miscarriage rates among trans men who become pregnant range from approximately 30 to 40%. The general population rate for miscarriages is 11 to 22%. That is a significant gap. Researchers noted that prior testosterone use appeared to be associated with reduced ability to conceive, but crucially, testosterone is not reliable contraception. Some trans men and providers were treating it as such. That is a dangerous misunderstanding. The study also found worrying signals about postpartum depression and almost no existing research to understand what's driving any of these outcomes or how to address them. The authors issued an urgent call for more trans-specific research. They also pointed out that the healthcare system is largely unprepared to support transmasculine pregnancies, which happen more than people realize, with surveys suggesting 6 to 9% of transmasculine people have experienced pregnancy. At a moment when the Orange Convicted Felons Administration is systematically dismantling trans healthcare access, research like this, that trans masculine people need better, more specialized care, not less, lands in a stark contrast to the direction this administration is taking us. Our next story is Duffy calls bike lanes DEI and cancels $1.73 billion in grants while mocking Pete. This story is both infuriating and almost too absurd to even believe. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, the man who replaced Pete Buttigieg, announced this week that he is canceling a $1.73 billion with a B dollar in Biden-era infrastructure grants, calling them DEI bike lanes. He then took the opportunity to mock Pete Buttigieg by name. Here's what that was actually funded by those grants: a transit center in North Carolina, bridge replacements in New Mexico, street extensions in New Hampshire, traffic lights and crosswalks in Missouri, and yes, bike lanes in Seattle. All that is now in limbo or being canceled and redirected. Bike lanes, by the way, do save lives. The research is clear. Pedestrian infrastructure reduces traffic fatalities, but because Pete Buttigieg once said those grants would help advance equity and combat climate change, that was enough to trigger the MAGA machine into calling it all DEI and pulling the funding. The Daily Wire ran this as a victory. The headline was effectively, "We're killing bike lanes, and we're proud of it." What does this have to do with our community? It's a lot. Pete Buttigieg was the first openly gay cabinet secretary in American history. His successor is now systematically dismantling his legacy and using his name as a punchline in the process. That's not incidental, that's intentional. And in many cities, LGBTQ plus residents disproportionately rely on public transportation, walkable infrastructure, and bike lanes. This isn't just symbolism, it has real consequences for real people. Again, we focus on the wrong shit in this country. We're taking away bike lanes and calling them DEI because you're a little scared of DEI, you stupid fuck. Anyway, next and last story is a man steps up to run for U.S. Senate in Maine. So we're ending on something that feels, if not hopeful, at least energizing. You may have heard that Maine's Democratic Senate nominee, Graham Plattner, dropped out of the race yesterday, and after a former partner came forward with a sexual assault allegation. Plattner had been a rising star candidate backed by major progressive energy, and he suspended his campaign. That opened the door, and a gay man walked through it. Jordan Wood, an attorney and activist, has re-entered the race. He had previously run against Plattner in the primary and lost, but now he's back. Wood said, and I'm quoting him here, "I have been told that a gay man can't win. The cynics are wrong." Maine is one of the most competitive Senate races in 2026. Senator Susan Collins is not on that ballot, but the dynamics of this race matter enormously for the balance of power. Whether Jordan Wood can consolidate Democratic support quickly enough to win is a real question. But the fact that a gay man is now leading the Democratic contender for a U.S. state's Senate seat in a state repeatedly shown it can elect candidates across party lines is a story worth watching. We are not done, and we are running. I am going to hopefully be able to interview Jordan Wood on my other podcast, Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay, because I want him to win. So that's your Listen Up Girl podcast for Friday, June 10th. 6 stories, all new, things that you need to know. If this show is part of your day, make it part of more people's days. Share this podcast, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and leave a rating or review. It generally helps more people find us. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube at TheRealZachRE and listenupgirl.com for more. Have a great weekend. Stay loud, stay informed, and take care of yourselves. I'll see you back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news.